Good evening. On behalf of the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission, I would like to welcome you to our webinar on the 2018 Pollution Control Standards Review. My name is Richard Harrison. I'm the Executive Director for the Commission, and with me is Jason Heath, who is Director of our Technical Programs. Together, we'll be providing a brief overview of the Commission's second review for the pollution control standards and provide some background on the Commission. And then Jason will be going through the details of the review that we're undertaking currently. I'm going to provide a little information on the purpose of this review. The Commission reviews its standards at least every 3 years. So the Commission has pollution control standards that apply to the Ohio River. They do not apply to the interstate waters within the basin, only the Ohio River. And the Commission periodically conducts an in-depth review of its role in water quality standards implementation through the Pollution Control Standards Program. The Commission also looks at other programs, so this is a more holistic review than the Commission typically does through the triennial review. And these programmatic reviews by the Commission are conducted to help ensure that our limited resources are utilized in the most effective and cost-efficient manner on behalf of our partners. One thing I wanted to clarify before we get into the details of the review is that the Commission's criteria are in-stream ambient water quality limits that are applied for the Ohio River. This particular update has included two 45-day public comment periods. The first one was completed in February, and we are in the midst of our second comment period. And the purpose of this review is to solicit input from the public on proposed specific revisions to the pollution control standards for discharges to the Ohio River 2015 revision. That was the last triennial update by the Commission. I want to provide a little bit of information on who ORSANCO is. ORSANCO is an organization that was formed in 1948 by the signing of a compact by the governors of 8 states and was approved by the U.S. Congress. The states include the 6 main stem states of Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and also New York and Pennsylvania. And the federal government is also a signator of the compact through Congress and is included within the Commission. We have 3 commissioners from each of the states and 3 federal commissioners that form ORSANCO's board of directors, if you will. These are the policy decision makers for the Commission. The compact provides ORSANCO's mission and authorities for our day-to-day operations, and we really focus on the control of interstate water pollution. I wanted to speak briefly about some of our program areas of which the pollution control standards really are part of our regulatory program. We also have a water quality monitoring and assessment program. We have a spill detection and response program where we work with utilities and other stakeholders to respond to spills on the Ohio River. We have Clean Water Act and Safe Drinking Water Act coordination programs and implementation. That includes source water protection, which we look at nutrients and HABs on the river, and then also really pull in the spill detection and response as part of that program. We have a robust applied research program. Some examples of that are a mercury study that we're currently undertaking and past pharmaceutical studies. And we also have a public involvement program that includes volunteer monitoring, river sweep, and our Life Below the Waterline mobile aquarium program. And then before I turn it over to Mr. Heath, I wanted to provide a little bit of background really to set the stage as to how we've reached this particular review and the subject of this particular review. The current review began with the appointment of a commission ad hoc committee to review the Commission's role in water quality standards implementation in 2015. So this has been a very thorough and transparent review that has been really taking place over the past several years. The ad hoc committee developed 5 alternatives for consideration. These alternatives range from essentially eliminating the Commission's pollution control standards to enhancing the standards, and really several alternatives in between. These alternatives were distributed for comment to the Commission's advisory committees and technical committee. The Commission has a number of advisory committees that help provide input and guidance to the Commission. These include our watershed organizations committees, which are environmental watershed groups within the basin. We have industrial committees. We have a water user advisory committee, POTW, Power or Publicly Operated Treatment Works committee. And so we have a robust group of advisors that provide input to the Commission. So these committees reviewed the alternatives and provided input to the Commission. And then after this process was completed, the ad hoc committee recommended referred expanded alternative number 2 to the Commission. And this alternative 2 also included a minority report. And this really serves as the foundation for the specific proposal that's out for comment currently. All of this information was provided in the initial public review, and this information is available on our webpage, our Pollution Control Standards webpage. So if you want to review any of the details from that initial process, feel free to do so. And I wanted to just make a couple of other points again before I turn it over to Jason. This initiation of the second phase of the review process simply begins the next phase of the PCS review. No decision has been made by the Commission. The earliest the final decision will be made regarding the Commission's role in pollution control standards will be at its October 4th Commission meeting in Lansing, West Virginia. The Commission is committed to continued cooperation and collaboration on state and federal water quality standards programs for the Ohio River. Really what makes this review different than past reviews is we are looking at the standards from a holistic standpoint versus a specific criteria by criteria review. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Heath, our Technical Programs Director for the Commission, and Jason can go through the details of this specific review and how to provide comment and input to the Commission.
Thank you, Richard, and good evening, everyone. Just a few points on the webinar. We will complete this presentation and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. All participants currently are muted. It looks like we'll be able to unmute folks after we're done with the presentation so that you can verbally ask questions. Alternatively, you can type a question into the public chat box on the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and we'll be able to see that question written if you prefer to do that. Comments, for the record, must be submitted by the end of the day on August 10th, and instructions for doing so are on our website, but I'll go through those briefly in a moment. Initial public comments received, as Richard mentioned, we had an initial public review that went from January 10th to February 24th. It wasn't quite as detailed a proposal as we currently have at this time. But we did receive 783 third-party emails that were not in favor of the preferred expanded alternative number 2. And then we received 14 detailed comments from entities that were not in favor of alternative number 2. And additionally, we received 17 detailed comments from entities that were in favor of alternative number 2. All of the comments that we received are in a PDF file that is located on our website in the Pollution Control Standards page towards the bottom. If you click on resource materials from the initial public review period, you can view all of the comments that we received at that time. Okay, so this webinar we're holding today is part of the second public review. On June 7th, 2018, at the Commission's regularly scheduled meeting, they voted to proceed with this second public review. Specific revisions to the standards are being proposed in this review, and they are on our website. If you go to ORSANCO's website under Pollution Control Standards, you will find a marked up version. So that shows you, based on the current 2015 standards, it shows you what is being deleted and what is being added, line by line. And then there's a clean version of what's being proposed. And so really those two documents, those standards, are the specific revisions that are being proposed. The comment period was opened on June 26th, and again, it will go through August 10th. In addition to this webinar, we held a webinar a week ago, and we will be holding a hearing on July 26th at 6 p.m. at the Cincinnati Airport Holiday Inn. I will just point out that the hearing is a little more formal than these webinars. We take comments from participants, but it's not really a back and forth question and answer session, and that's really why we hold these webinars. And additionally, if there are more questions after this webinar, feel free to contact me or Richard, and we can answer any questions you might have. So just to give you a brief idea, these next two slides show what the current 2015 pollution control standards, what the table of contents looks like. The next slide I'll show you is what the proposed revisions, what the table of contents would look like, and it's just to kind of give you an overview of what's going to happen with the document. Hopefully everyone can read that. So then you'll see the 2018 proposed revision, and this is what the table of contents will look like should the proposed revisions go through. With that, I will discuss a little more specifically each of the revisions that are being proposed, but again, I would refer you to the red line document on our website for more detail. It won't be possible to give every detail of what is the revisions that are being proposed. But briefly, what's being proposed, Chapter 1.1, which is titled Authority and Purpose. There is some language that is being deleted and some language that is being added. Again, I would refer you to the red line document to read the specifics of that. Chapter 1.2, which is the definitions section of the standards, we removed non-applicable definitions. So basically, with the revisions, some of the revisions that were in the 2015 document, they no longer appear in the 18 proposed standards, and so we removed those definitions, not being necessary. Chapter 1.3, under general conditions, There were 4 freedom statements that were deleted, and 1 more generalized freedom statement was added, and that was added to be consistent with the language as contained in ORSANCO's compact, which is our guiding document. Under Chapter 1.6 variances, that entire section is being proposed to be removed. Under Chapter 1.7, site-specific criteria, that section is being proposed to be removed. Chapter 2.1, designated uses, that chapter is the language in there is being modified to be consistent with the language in our compact. Under Chapter 2.2, clarification of uses, that section is being proposed to be completely removed. Continuing, Chapter 3, water quality criteria, that contains our numeric criteria. That entire chapter is being proposed to be removed. Same with Chapter 4 on mixing zones, proposing that entire chapter be removed. Chapter 5 is the wastewater discharge requirements. There are a number of sections within that Chapter 5 that are being proposed to be removed. Those sections are on placarding of outfalls, critical flow, alternative treatment, combined sewers, industrial waste, residues from potable water treatment plants, cooling water, and other waste. Those sections are being proposed to be removed. And then the section on wastewater discharge requirements is being proposed to be modified, again, to be consistent with the language contained in our compact. And then all of the appendices in the 2015 standards are also being proposed to be removed. So that, in a general statement, is what is being proposed. And again, we would refer you to the red line document, and you can see specifically everything that is being proposed. Public notification of this second review hearing. We sent out the notice of hearing, and that was done on June 26th to open this second review. That notice of hearing was sent to 197 media outlets. Over 3,200 emails were sent to citizens and ORSANCO affiliates, basically interested parties. We have an email distribution list. And then, in addition to that, over 700 postcards were mailed to all of the permitted discharges on the Ohio River. In addition to that, we have established a website to support this review. There is the address for the website. If you Google ORSANCO, you'll find it and go to Pollution Control Standards section. The schedule for this second public review, it was opened on June 26th. Informational webinars were held on July 12th and this webinar today. A hearing is scheduled for July 26th at 6 p.m. at the Cincinnati Airport Holiday Inn. The public comment period will close at the end of the day on August 10th. And then it is possible that the Commission may proceed with some action at its regularly scheduled meeting on October 4th in Lansing, West Virginia. A little more detail on how to submit comment. Again, they must be submitted by the end of the day on August 10th. Instructions for submitting comments are on our website, but basically email would be our preferred way to receive comments. It makes it easier for us to manage. So that's our preferred method. And they would be mailed to pcs@orsanco.org. However, if you would like to send written comments, by regular mail, there is the address. We certainly will take them that way as well. And then the third way to comment is verbally at the hearing on July 26th. So all three of those methods will work. So that concludes the presentation.